Good morning. My name is Eric Alstrom, and I'll be introducing Lisa Barrios. She'll be presented on the GAP allocation, consultation, and guidance revisions. Lisa is a senior advisor for the Tribal Capacity Development in the EPA American Indian Environmental Office, Office of International and Tribal Affairs. Lisa Barrios leads the Tribal Capacity Development Team and is a senior advisor for the Indian Environmental General Assistance Program, the EPA's largest tribal grant program. Morning, Lisa.
Good morning, thank you. So I am going to be talking this morning about some updates on the GAP program. I know some of our leadership from the Office of International and Tribal Affairs and also the American Indian Environmental Office were able to speak earlier in the week. And we had some discussion then, but I was hoping to spend a little time today going a little bit into more detail. I just saw Chairman Paddock come on, RTOC, good to see you again. So today I'll just be going over some highlights of where we are with the GAP guidance revisions. And I am also going to talk about some of the more significant themes that we heard in the GAP allocation consultation that was held toward the end of last year. And then I will close up with what our next steps are planned to be. So if you could go to the next slide. I only have a couple of slides here, and mainly just to guide the conversation to keep me on track. But we, as part of the GAP guidance revisions, it's been underway for several years, since 2018, when we had an initial consultation with tribes to ask them to give us some additional feedback on their concerns with the 2013 guidance. We had been able to collect over the years since its implementation some feedback from different RTOCs, tribal partnership groups, the NTC, and tribes, but we wanted to create a consultation opportunity to dive into that in a little bit more detail. We received over 800 individual comments from tribes on the guidance and went into a period of evaluation internally to talk about the changes that we could make. Last year, we asked tribes to join us in revision work groups, and we had 5 specific work groups. We had one looking at how to improve the structure of the General Assistance Program. So they were providing us with input on how to include more graphics, how to focus more on clarity and plain language in the guidance. I also wanted to know on some of the graphics, we were talking about how the indicators in the guidance are presented as very linear, and we wanted to be able to express an acknowledgement of the nonlinear process that tribes may use for capacity building. So we've stated that in our revisions, but are looking for examples from tribes if they would like to provide that, whether it's a case study or something that is a graphic or a testimonial statement that really just talks about, from a tribe's perspective, what the capacity building process looks like. We also had a work group looking at the connections between ETEPs and indicators and performance measures, and talking about ETEPs as that tool that is a strategic planning document and helps everyone to be on the same page as to where the tribe's priorities are, how they overlap with EPA's work, and how we're going to work together to address those priorities. But it also has a measurement component, which is a big step for the indicators to really be able to talk about progress that is being made to achieve capacity with GAP, which is its primary intent. And then we had some focus looking at technical assistance. There is the GAP statute. The first part talks about financial assistance, but the second part also talks about providing technical assistance. So we looked at ways that we could greater bolster having technical assistance in the guidance, and also tools that we could use. And Mr. Paddock, I see you have your hand raised. Do you want to take questions now as we go through, or at the end?
I can wait. My apologies, Lisa. Sorry.
It's okay. I just wasn't sure. And then for flexibilities, we had a couple of different work groups looking at ways that we could expand some of the flexibilities that already are available to us. So how can we sort of test drive or pilot programs for capacity building purposes, and what are some of the administrative flexibilities that we have in utilizing our performance partnership grants. The next slide. We also have been looking at the national GAP allocation. The national GAP allocation it comes to AIO from Congress. It's appropriated annually from Congress. We have a process that we use at headquarters, and then we distribute that funding to the regions based on our national allocation process. And the regions are the ones who work with tribes and intertribal consortia to negotiate work plans and to award the funding. So we were looking at that national process that looks at how money goes from our office and headquarters to the regions. Currently, it is essentially $110,000 per federally recognized tribe in the region. So we kind of started in Region 1. And we say Region 1 has 10 federally recognized tribes. So here's the amount of 110 times 10 goes to Region 1. So we kind of just work it through in that fashion. We had gotten an audit several years ago, over a decade ago, from the Inspector General. And one of the things that they recommended that we do was take a look at the allocation methodology. So that's kind of what we've been doing in consultation. We did have some very specific questions that we asked. We didn't have a proposed change when we came out in consultation. It was just really to hear from tribes about their thoughts, about some options, around some potential considerations. And what I'm sharing here on my screen is just some of the big picture things that we heard from the tribes. I would say the first two that are bulleted are the most consistent that we heard, and we heard this like from every tribe and in every conversation that we had, was that it's really, really important to have reliable and consistent GAP funding. So basing the GAP allocation on something at a tribal level that may change from year to year was something that was quite concerning because of the need for that base consistent GAP funding. We also heard that there needed to be an increase in the current allocation. Like I said, right now it's 110 per federally recognized tribe, 110,000. That there needed to be focus on increasing that amount that goes to tribes. Some other things that we heard was that it works the way it is, and there is no need to be looking at any potential changes. We heard that from some tribes that we should only be funding tribes that apply for GAP grants. We also heard from some that there should be a consideration of environmental needs and what the tribe's priorities are in the allocation process. And then I would add, especially in our conversations with tribes in Region 10, we also heard and heard it again earlier this week, that it is, that there's a great need for us to be able to slow down, because the whole process has been moving quite quickly, and there's been just a lot going on with tribes, dual fold, like in this current administration, many activities that I think are positive and well received, but at the same time, there's a number of federal agencies that are coming to tribes with consultations and with proposed changes. And it's a lot coming at one time. And then also that all of this is happening in the time of COVID, when we're still in that recovery phase. So I would add that that is something additional we have heard. If you go to the next slide. So lastly, I just wanted to spend a few minutes going over next steps. We, like I said, had the work group on the GAP guidance revision that included about 30 tribes. Right now, we're meeting bi-weekly instead of weekly, just because we're in an internal review phase of the revised guidance. Until this past week, AIO had pins down while the guidance was being reviewed by comment and being commented on by regions and by programs. And now we're back in and reviewing their input on the guidance. We plan to come to consultation with tribes in April, particularly on April 4th, to talk about the revised guidance, and to also consult on any proposed changes to the national GAP allocation. One of the things that we've been working with the National Tribal Caucus on is how to best conduct some of the nationally facilitated discussions. When we were having the consultation on the allocation, we had set some of those up regionally so that there would be just smaller settings of discussion. But we got some feedback from tribes that was perceived by some as being divisive in communications. And so we don't want to follow that same approach, but we do want to have opportunities for focused dialogue. And one of the things that we're considering is, since the GAP guidance is quite vast and covers a lot of topics, that would be challenging to do in brief 90-minute discussions. And so we're looking at having a couple of overall sort of overview of the guidance, but then have one focused discussion on the scope of GAP, and maybe another one on ETAPs and performance measures, so to break them down topically. So if anyone has any feedback on that, of course, that would be in addition to government consultations and other meetings and venues where we would be invited to talk. And then lastly, our guidance is, and any changes to the allocation would be effective for October 1, 2022. And so any work plans that would be negotiated after that time would be reflecting new guidance. And that is what I have for slides. I tried to be very brief, so we had plenty of time for questions.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Just a reminder, you can enter your questions into the chat, or you can, under reactions, click on raise hand and you can ask your question verbally. So we'll wait just a minute. We do have Ray. Ray, go ahead.
Thank you. And hi, Lisa. Sorry, my apologies to the group for being a little late. I just wanted to ask you if the EPA would present the draft GAP guidance and allocation to the RTOC for review and feedback. Also, wanted to check too, in regards if the GAP guidance will impact funding from consortiums. I don't think we really got an answer during Jane and Joanne's conversation. Granted, it was a great one, but I don't think we ever really fully got an answer. So I'm just wondering, is that going to be impacted?
Okay, so your first question was around whether or not we would do a presentation with the RTOC or have a discussion with the RTOC. And we would certainly do that once things are shared after April 4th. So
Pardon me? Say that again. I'm sorry.
once things are shared and made available on April 4th.
If that's how, yeah, or before, if possible. Either way, but we just wanted to know if you guys would be able to present that gap guidance and allocation to the talk.
Yes, we'll be happy to make presentations and have discussions after the 4th of April. Then
Right.
you'll have it in front of you and you can review it and be able to ask your questions. And then your second question was specifically, I think it was asked if we were looking to defund or exclude consortia from GAP. That was the question that came to Joanne earlier in the week.
Yeah, will it impact funding to consortia?
So would it impact funding? I mean, potentially. We are looking at other opportunities to have oversight and more accountability with our work for consortia. We're also looking at other flexibilities for consortia. Some of the requests that we heard in the 2018 guidance were directly around documentation flexibilities. So there may potentially be changes with how we work with consortia, but we are certainly not looking to defund or eliminate consortia from any aspect of GAP.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Not entirely what I wanted to hear, but thank you.
Yeah, Aaron Miles, I just wanted to just make a statement. I think, it's important that, because we, as our talks, we uphold all of the tribes that we serve. And it's important that, however EPA chooses to work with us or through us, whether it's accountability issues. But I think the most difficult part is not knowing the intent from EPA, especially in the Biden administration. We went through a lot already with under the Trump administration, a lot of hidden agendas. And so there's a little bit of a feeling that that's what this is too. There's not a, in the Clinton rule or the executive order, tribes are supposed to have, be privy to any ideas before they even, become written on paper and formalized, and that's not what's going on here. So I mean, it just leads to, well, what's really going on? And I think tribes can hear, they're more than willing to listen to what needs to happen. But in a time where more money is being divvied out to tribes, and to try to restrain and confine tribes to something different, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And it just makes it worse, So I just wanted to let you know, tribes are not, we've been in this game for a long time with BIA. They do the same thing, trying to reformulate stuff, and it only makes it worse with other tribes going after money, and then you end up kicking somebody out of their situation, or out of the whole their funding ability and their ability to actually develop their program. So anyways, I just wanted to share that, because I think what I've been hearing, most tribes are willing to, work, but at the same time, it's one of those things where we're not going to sit here and just, should be shared. The information should be shared of what your grand goal is for the programming. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aaron. We have another question from Adam, if you want to go ahead and unmute.
Sure. Hey, I just wanted to mention, in terms of the RTOC, kind of what we were talking about is the May session. inviting Lisa and whatever other staff are appropriate to come in and just basically hold that May session agenda and substantially, if not entirely, on this gap. So just in terms of timing, that would come out, whatever gets proposed comes out in early April. There's some number of webinars that educate everybody, maybe a little bit of dialogue started, and then we'll hold that May time specifically for Region 10 RTalk to be able to do a deeper dive dialogue. And hopefully at that time, everyone's seen it, understands it, and it's just conversation dialogue. It's not really presentation style. So just want to make that point. So Ray and Aaron, others here. Okay, thanks.
Adam.
Thank you, Adam. And then we have Scott, if you want to unmute.
Scott Hauser. I'm the executive director with the Upper Snake River Tribes Foundation in Boise, Idaho. And I represent our work for 2 Region 10 tribes, 2 Region 9 tribes. And as a consortia, we do not consult on a government to government basis. That's obviously we allow our federally recognized tribes do that. So we did not have an opportunity to provide our insights on any GAP changes to consortia last year. We also won't have any opportunity post April 4th because we won't obviously consult again. So my question is, what is the process for consortia to have a meaningful conversation with EPA about any proposed changes to consortia funding? And I'll just be very direct that the nationally focused listening sessions are not going to be sufficient. We need to have some more direct conversations with EPA. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that question. So we did provide in the 2018 consultation, we did have a call set aside during the consultation period that was specific to a coordination opportunity, like an engagement discussion with intertribal consortia. So it was not it was not billed as consultation. It was not perceived as consultation, but it was an opportunity to meet specifically with consortia. We also had in the allocation in the fall, we had another coordination engagement call set aside to reach out and to consortia. And then in the proposed timeline for the 120-day consultation period that begins on April 4th, we also have additional time set aside for consortia for a discussion. We, in the GAP revisions process, we opened that up to tribes and consortia, and of the 30 or so tribal representatives we had on the work group, I would say at least 5 of those were from tribal consortia. So we engaged consortia there as well. And of the 800 or some odd comments that you see that are captured on the website for comments that we received in the 2018 consultation and coordination process, a number of those also include comments from intertribal consortia. So I hope that kind of outlines that we do plan, that we have had to have a space and opportunity, and we plan to continue to do so, to have the opportunity for consortia to provide that input when we might not be engaging government to government consultation. Consortia are a grantee and play an important role in GAP with tribes and capacity building. So we do want to have representation for that voice.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Ray.
Yeah, hi. Thank you again. Just in regards to what Scott was saying, and also to what you're saying about this process of being able to sit down and work together. And I know that the EPA done that, and you did mention that. back in the fall. But I just want to point out and make this comment clear. It was rushed. It was fast. It was difficult during COVID. Not entirely. I mean, I think the approach, again, and I'll go back to saying that the approach was there, and we were happy to see that the EPA was willing to consult with tribes and consortia in this possible design out of this allocation process. But again, it was a very rushed process, one that's not necessarily needed to be pushed through at a time with COVID happening, where we're not able to have all our resources or our capacities with us to ensure that the decision-making, the decisions behind this process is being made properly. But I want to give kudos again to the EPA for having that approach. We don't really see that approach in other agencies, but it's just way too fast. It happened way too fast, and I don't want to say unmeaningful, but the lack of meaning was there due to the fact of COVID really hindering many people to have the opportunity to really build out what we think GAP should be, or for consortia and for tribes. And thank you.
Thank you, Ray. We have a question in the room from Bill.
Hi, good morning. Bill Han, NTOC seat number 1 for Alaska. I just want to make a point more than just a comment. And hi, Lisa. Good to see you this morning. I'm a tribal administrator for a small tribe in Alaska. The consortia in rural Alaska fill a real void in our environmental presence. So I think any changes, I'm just going to put out there, any changes to our consortia funding may be a drastic change to our tribes. So when I think of no harm or no change, I think that it has to be addressed, that goes through consortia also. I just want to make that real clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Well said,
we
Bill.
do have a comment/question in the chat from Brandy. Just wanted to clarify, are they saying that they will release the guidance, then meet with RTOC? And if so, can RTOC meet with them before the final product? So maybe, Lisa, you can clarify again.
Yeah, so it will be after April 4th when the final materials are available. And there won't be opportunity within the next month to meet, because we are actively making changes and talking with our legal and trying to get ready for the 4th. And there could still be potential changes between now and then. So we will be ready 1 month from today. Today is March 4th, to share the revised guidance and any proposed changes, and to talk about them after that time.
Do you have a question? Thank you, Lisa. We have another question in the room from Shawna.
Good morning. Insarita Chamakat, Shawna Larson. I serve as the alternate for Ray, and I guess this meeting's been going really good, and I feel like I've been so grateful to get invited to come and get to be able to hang out with other people and see people in person. I had to leave early yesterday because I just got it's like so mentally exhausting to come to the meetings as a tribal leader and try to explain what it is about our way of life and our way of living. And I was just thinking yesterday, because I've been doing this for a lot of years. I've been coming to these meetings for years. And we're coming to the time in my tribe where a lot of our elders are starting to pass on. I've been doing this work since I was 20. And we're starting to realize that we're going to have to start explaining to the next generation that's going to come on what it is that they need to do when we hand the baton over to them, and how do we explain to the future generations like how the best way to work with EPA. You know, we're going to have to explain to our kids about risk assessment and how in a westernized construct that there's somebody's that gets paid as a job to decide how many of us it's okay to pass away from cancer. What's the acceptable level of risk? I have to explain that to my kids. I have to explain to them about ANCSA and the corporations and reservations. I have to explain to them our original instructions and how Creator has asked us to be here on this place and continue carrying out our responsibilities of taking care of the earth and each other. But I also have to explain to our kids about listening sessions. And I have to help them understand what's the difference between a listening session and a government-to-government consultation. I have to help them understand what the word meaningful means when they're asking for consultation, because that's a legal term. I have to make sure that our future generations will understand that tribes are not stakeholders, but tribes are actually governments. And I need to make sure that they understand that we are not here in a pitiful manner as Indigenous people. We're not here trying to figure out how we can get the government or the EPA to continue giving us money to clean up the pollution that was left there by somebody else. So we have to explain these things to our kids, and some of these tribes are very small. We often feel like the burden of proof is left with us as Indigenous people. We always have to prove why. We always have to prove where did it come from. Although in a westernized construct, we understand that we have to get a 9-to-5 job or an 8-to-5 job, and we have to come to meetings like this and we have to discuss these things. But I think it's important to remember that no matter how many times we have this conversation, we're still talking about two very different things. The first thing is our original instructions and how it is that we can carry out the work and the responsibilities that were given to us by the Creator, versus how we can watch as a westernized construct continues to call it a democracy, push forward the economy, be concerned about money, and not really give us the funding to clean up the environment, but the money to plan how we can do it. And so those tribes that are really small in Alaska, they get together, and when I say small, our tribe's about 400 people, but my mom's tribe is 200. And when I say small, I mean sometimes we just don't have the capacity to carry these things out in our communities. And when we say small, sometimes we don't have the ability, because we're so small, to attend the listening sessions. And sometimes because we're so small, we don't have the ability to attend every single government-to-government consultation. That, however, does not infringe on our sovereignty to be able to decide for ourselves in our own self-determination who is going to represent us. And as small tribes have come together and asked for consortias to help them to be able to carry these out, because sometimes it's a little overwhelming to try to do original instructions. and try to figure out how to beg you not to cut the funding. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shawna. We have Miranda and Gayla that are going to unmute and go.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hi, Lisa. I was in and out of, I just was able to join the meeting, and then I just wanted to bring to the table here, as we're hearing things within our own RTalk, and we brought this up at the National Tribal Caucus, or the NTalk meeting that we had earlier this week about the GAP allocation and the GAP guidance. And, you know, we were reassured that there wasn't going to be, you know, any cuts to consortia. However, we keep hearing rumors that we're going to be cut with consortia, and this really concerns us. And I'm really glad that Shawna was able to bring up that point of how heavily, you know, tribes rely on consortia. And I just wanted to see if you can talk about that, about the allocation for consortia at this meeting, so that we could get everything on. You know, the last thing we need to do is to have any more fear upon us in this world that we're living in. I mean, we're just now able to, you know, not wear masks and do all this stuff and gather together. And it's just like, we don't want to be living in a fear environment. And I think it's, it should be fair that you guys are out front forward and straight with us, instead of us hearing all of these different rumors that we're hearing.
So I apologize, Gayla. Hey, I apologize that you're hearing rumors and that there's, you know, concern, and I understand that it would be fright that is being caused. I worked for a consortia for almost a decade before I came to EPA for an intertribal consortia. So I firsthand understand the power and the importance of the work that they do, especially working with small tribes. And I, you know, I will say that currently right now in the national appropriation allocation process, it is 110 per federally recognized tribe. So we are not looking at any, you know, any direct cuts to consortia. We are looking at ways through the guidance to really help consortia find their place in the GAP guidance. To we've provided space and response to requests for removing some of the administrative burden for consortia that were associated with documentation requirements. So I cannot share any direct comments on the proposed allocation. We're still in daily, weekly conversations with management, with legal, with DRAs and regions. And so we're still trying to come up with what the proposed changes might be. But I can only just, you know, reiterate what Joanne said in the National Tribal Caucus, that while there, you know, there's going to be changes in GAP, and that's going to include change to consortia, but we are not looking to defund or exclude consortia from GAP in any way.
Okay, if I could just follow up, how do I don't know how to work this phone.
I hear you.
I guess, you know, if I could just follow up, I mean, that's really clear. So, I mean, I guess we could expect some cuts then. That, I mean, we're not going to have, we're still going to have direct funding, but, and have cuts. I mean, we've been operating at these numbers for how many years, you know, with hardly any increases, and the tribes that we do serve, you know, heavily rely on the consortias for questions and answers. And especially with the new guidance coming out, there's going to be so many questions and so much time that we're going to have to spend working with the tribes to help them understand. I'm glad that we're having this conversation here at this RTalk meeting while you guys are still having your conversations so you can bring back these concerns, especially for the Alaska tribes of who we represent. I mean, we have 229 federally recognized tribes, and you're talking about a lot of funding that could be cut, and I don't think that APA has the capacity to help with the project officers, to help all of these tribes with those simple questions that we're able to help answer as consortia. So, I hope that you at least keep us at the same amount of funding that you've been funding us for consortia. And we could hear your message loud and clear that we're still going to get funding. But I guess the message that we're all hearing is we're going to have reduced funding. And as inflation is going up, and how much we have to pay to travel to get out of where we're going and to get to the places that we need to go to, we can't afford any more cuts than what the budget that we already have. So I guess you could hopefully take that message back. And this is something that we're definitely going to keep talking about within the RTalk and, within the NTalk. If you were on this side of the table as we're waiting for the allocation and, hearing these rumors and hearing you guys say we're not going to get cut, I mean, we're still going to get funding, but I think what we're reading between the lines here is that we're going to get reduced funding. So please bring that strong message back as you guys are having these important meetings. And is there any tribal representation on your meetings?
Not at this time. We will talk with tribes previously in consultation to get input, and we're in our internal time, and then we're coming back in a month to talk more.
Okay, well, we'll be on that April 4th meeting for NTalk, but
Yeah.
I'll turn it over to whoever else wants to talk, but those are really big concerns that we have. So I really do hope that you hear us.
Thank you, Gayla.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gayla. So we are nearing the end of our time, but we do want to have Tiffany go ahead. We just want to make sure, we're running out of time though.
Hi, Lisa. This is Tiffany Allgood from the Coeur d'Alene Tribe. Have had the GAP grant for 25 plus years now, and just had a question that Mark Gauthier also put in the chat from the Upper Columbia United Tribes, and that is, how much do you think that EPA is going to be able to be responsive to comments you get from the drafts that you release after April 4th?
So you're right. What comes to you will be draft. For the guidance, we're proposing a 120-day consultation. We're very hopeful that since we've been working on this for a number of years, and that we included the work groups and are been very responsive to tribal comments, we're hopeful we've done a much better job and are going to be hitting some of the really important points that we will be responsive to those comments that come back from tribes from there before we go final with the guidance.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, Lisa. We appreciate it. We are going to go ahead and move to our next session.
Really quickly, Mina, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
Sorry.
I just wanted to thank Lisa for taking the time to chat with us and work with us. I think you're doing a good job in hearing what we got to say and then hopefully relaying back onto leadership at EPA. I know you're the messenger and not trying to beat up the messenger, but we appreciate you taking the time to hear what we got to say.
Thank you, Ray.